Good afternoon. First and foremost, I'd like to thank TEDxYouth de La Salle Senior High School for this opportunity. My name is Ayen dela Torre, and I'm here to talk about collective individuality. After saying yes to this invitation, I immediately started worrying. What can I say that you can relate to? Then I thought about my high school self and what I'd be interested to hear. What do I want to be when I grow up? Anong gusto kong maging paglaki ko? Most of us encounter this question during our early years when our identities are just taking shape. People ask this question to get a sense of who we are, what we are into, and sometimes which box to place us in. Over the years, as I've grown older, I've never really had one answer to this question. At different points in my life, I wanted to be a fashion designer, an actress that plays Cho Chang in Harry Potter, an author, a life coach. And my career has been similarly winding. I'm turning 31 this year. I know I'm an aging millennial. And I've already changed career tracks 4 times since I graduated from UP. I started out at corporate and was assigned to work with union members in an ice cream factory. Then I became a PA or production assistant for a film crew that's making a documentary about music. In 2014, I helped build a chain of after school centers teaching kids how to be gritty and resilient. And now I'm a full-time creative. Why am I telling you this? Because none of these chapters fit any of the dreams I had before. But while my reality does not align with my childhood aspirations, I realize that my answer now to the question, what do I want to be when I grow up, is that I'm simply not done growing. Hindi pa ako tapos. And who I want to be is shaped by the communities I belong to. My perspective on the importance of community in building one's identity stems from my experience at Where to Next. So Where to Next started as this random Facebook conversation I had with my friend Rach Aquino. We wanted to start a project where we could make art inspired by our travels. Honestly, the goal back then, which was like 6 years ago, was very simple. To document our adventures, to make art, and maybe get enough Instagram followers that we can actually travel for free. But the outcome was better than what we expected. Where to Next has grown into a platform where we connect and collaborate with the diverse communities we've met along the way. We discovered it wasn't just the two of us who yearned for this space where we could explore our curiosities. Hindi lang kami. There were a lot of us. Artists, writers, photographers, athletes, all from different backgrounds, majority of whom had day jobs, and we all wanted to devote our weekends to discovering places, meeting new people, and telling stories about how we felt and how we changed because of these adventures. One trip that changed me was when I spent Holy Week with the Lakas Aita community in Botolan, Zambales. My parents have worked with this indigenous community since I was a kid, and they invited me to visit their home. We would walk at dusk on barren lands filled with volcanic ash, remnants from the eruption of Mount Pinatubo that wiped away their homes and livelihoods back in 1991. The trek had to be done during the wee hours of the morning because that's when the ash is cool enough for the water buffalo or carabao to join the journey. I'm glad na may carabao because at some point in the trip, I was so exhausted that I asked if I could ride one. This 8-hour walk was a weekly commute for the Aitas to gather produce in the mountains and sell them in town. To me, it was an adventure, but to them, it was everyday life. And I asked my guide if I'd gone to the Pinatubo Crater Lake, a popular tourist destination in the area that I've been to several times. Usually riding a 4x4 car rather than a carabao. And he told me he has seen it from afar, but he hasn't visited the lake. I realized then that to travel was a privilege. Sightseeing isn't a priority when your foremost goal is to put food on the table and make sure that your family is safe and taken care of. I walked away with a deep sense of gratitude, having seen the place not as a tourist, but through the eyes of the people who know it as their home. After the trip, I showed my photos to a curator. He noticed that I gravitated towards human connection, but that my images lacked depth. Parang may kulang. He said it felt like I was just passing through. I was a visitor instead of someone who was building a connection. It stung a little to hear that, but I agreed with his observation. I personally felt that I had gained more value from the items than they had gained from me. But I was determined not to let a relationship end there. After all, belonging in a community means seeing your interaction not as a one-off exchange, but as a series of exchanges over time. It's about paying attention, listening to each other's stories, and seeing common threads. Since then, I haven't been able to go back to Botolan, but I've continued to have chats with Lakas chieftain Katubag and coordinated with him as they rebuilt their preschool with the money we raised through Where to Next. I don't see this interaction as charity, because when we become connected with others, we expand our sense of self to include them in it. Their struggles become our struggles, their joys become our joys, and we take up their causes as if they were our own. As our bonds deepen, our sense of self also expands and grows. Most of us have been in lockdown for over a year, so the idea of a shared sense of self might be more challenging, logistically and emotionally. At this point, we're so used to isolation and have developed mechanisms to cope. We explored hobbies like learning how to bake ube pandesal, how to keep a snake plant from dying, and how to ride a bike. And while these hobbies are really good for our well-being, what will keep us going in the long run would be our ties with one another. While in quarantine, Rach and I wanted to find a way to expand Where to Next community while in the comforts of our own home. And through the help of a grant, we created Life Stories Camp, a 4-day program where we trained 10 facilitators from different parts of the Philippines to run gatherings focused on conversations. Life Stories was inspired by the idea that we are more alike than we think we are. We can learn from each other's experiences when we make time to ask questions and hold space for each other's stories. Since the camp, our facilitators have run virtual workshops based on their passions. Nagkaroon kami ng events on communicating sustainability, redefining one's narrative, and even a cupping session to explore their love of coffee and food. And I've seen strangers share very personal stories over Zoom and cry as a form of joy and relief because someone on the other end was actually listening. While I don't think virtual gatherings can ever replace the magic of a face-to-face conversation, I do think it's possible to deepen our relationships even while we're physically apart. And hindi lang siya yung pag-deepen ng existing ones, you can even form new ties. I've witnessed the forming of new communities as a response to the shared struggles we all face. My friend Isa Barte reached out to me with the idea of creating a book of stories that reflect on our thoughts and experiences during lockdown. Together with her org, For the Future, we created The Artist Promise, a collective of 50 local artists, most of whom we had just met online during lockdown, and together we published 2 ebooks. We raised over 290,000 pesos and used that aid to support frontliners and families in need. And hindi lang kami na ganito. My other friend, Ayen Lopez, along with 400 volunteers, created Help from Home, which serves as this virtual database/yellow book of donation drives and hospitals in need of aid. And my friend TJ Malvar tapped his network of connections to partner with our country's farmers and vegetable growers, and together they created Gising Gising, which is a market platform that enables local produce to reach more people. The common thread among all these initiatives is that they are composed of people who decided to show up. People who decided to leverage their strengths to take part in causes that they believe in. You know, some of our connections are born out of chance, a genetic lottery that pairs us with our blood families, a geographical location that bonds us as a nation. But other connections, the ones that really shape us and impact us in ways that we can't imagine, are formed out of intention. When a stranger decides to reach out, to ask questions, and to listen. Our relationships with our communities are not fixed. They're constantly changing. And it really is up to us to nurture these ties. To treat them as something that is so integral to our own purpose and our own identity. And to end, here's my last advice. Instead of asking, what do I want to be when I grow up, which is quite complex and might change over time, ask yourself, who are the people that matter to me, and how am I showing up for them? Thank you guys for listening to my story.